You know you need to get better, but you just haven't done it. The hard conversation with your patients and athletes. That's what we're covering in this episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome all new listeners, and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. Today, we're talking about hard conversations. Before I go on to that, what is new and what's better in life? If you can't hear it, I am currently struggling with a sinus challenge. So I have researched tons of information. I am now doing like sinus massage. I am doing a like nasal massage device thing here. I've done the saline solutions. I am now doing in my sauna. I am doing a essential oil diffuser. I am doing everything in my power to get rid of this thing. Just it's as you get a little older, those cells are just not moving as fast. They're not recovering as they used to. So after my trip to Cancun 2 weeks ago, on the plane, I just felt like my eardrum just just made a funny sound. And I've been struggling with this ever since, but I'm on the up and up. I can only hear out of one ear, fun fact. So I'm just working through that. But other than that, the family is fantastic. Someone recently asked me, what are you working on? What are you doing? I said, honestly, I'm just planning out next year, 2025. And then officially, my wife and I were talking last night. We stayed up to like 11 or 12, starting to plan out 2026. So whenever you're listening to this, this was recorded in November of 2024. So we're about 2 years out, which is fantastic. And I think it's a big thing. I think if you're a physical therapist and you want to be successful, I think you start working with your partner and, maybe yourself and trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do in the next year? What do I need to plan out? I recently had a physical therapist that I asked, hey, are you coming to my course? And it was a year out, and they said, well, I really hadn't been thinking that far. I was like, you know what? Why? Why are you not thinking that far? Because if you want to be successful, these are like the smallest steps. So that's all the good things. Mapping out 2026, some vacations and some courses that I'm going to be taking, some bucket list courses that I've been taking for leadership and entrepreneurship. So planning those out. Otherwise, life is good. Those who've been asking, my back is better. I'm back at the gym, very, very consistent. I'm just very, very cautious at the moment. All right, let's talk about the episode. Why are we talking about hard conversations? Well, I'm in the middle, on the tail end of my clinical elevation mentorship program. It's an online course where I walk you through what it takes to work with high-end athletes, cash pay athletes, whatever it is, just something different from the normal insurance day-to-day monotony, feeling like you're in an Amazon warehouse and you're just fulfilling orders. Okay, so one of the things that most people struggle with in this last module was delivering news that's not easy. And that can be so many things. We're going to cover that. But ultimately, in an insurance-based style, when you are delivering a plan, right? So somebody comes to you with knee pain and they have it with running, right? They're a beginner runner and they just went out of the gate and they just started running with no warm-up, no nothing, no shoes, no mechanics, nothing, no building of volume, nothing at all. And they go to their physician, they go through insurance, they go through the whole process. A month later, you see them in your office and you're trying to figure out, okay, great. Hey, listen, William, here's the 5 exercises you need to do. And these are going to solve your mechanics. It's going to improve your stride, your running form, and then you move them on. That's fantastic. But sometimes you get athletes or cash pay patients who are looking for something a little different. They want to know the root of it. They want to know exactly what it is. And then sometimes they'll ask, well, how long is this going to take me to get better? And, your confidence as a sports PT is, well, I don't want to have that awkward conversation. I don't want to feel wrong. I don't want to do any of that. I just will say, well, that's fine. We'll talk about it next week. Let's just see how you feel. And what you're really doing is you're delaying the inevitable. You're delaying the real reality that you don't feel confident or comfortable having that conversation. And number two, you don't even know if they're going to get better. That's a real, in your head, that's a sick and twisted thought that's going in your head at 2 a.m., right? I can't believe this patient asked me that. I don't know what to do. Maybe it's my confidence. Maybe I need more skills. I'm not a good physical therapist. I have burnout. You go into this whole rabbit hole. And I want to give you the framework to have these hard conversations. And that's a tough word, hard conversations, but they are tough. They're only hard in your head. And this translate, get this, right? And I'm going to go through some psychology of your personality and those other things. I love this, as a leader, you have to understand how people process information. You need to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you speak to the weaknesses, you speak to the concerns, and that's how people get better, because you keep digging at the things that are not good and the thing they keep avoiding. So physical therapists typically avoid the hard conversation, the thing that keeps them up at night, the thing they're not good at, and they seek the things that are sexy and new that make them feel short-term confidence, which is CEUs and clinical things and marketing videos and all these other things. Like, all those things make you feel good about who you are and what you do. But the reality is you don't feel good about your weaknesses, which is your ability to, with confidence, attack certain questions or deliver a plan. Like, this is how long it's going to take you. This is exactly how it's going to be. It's going to be 12 weeks. Here's the exact thing. And you're afraid of those things. And we're going to cover that. And so when you look at why physical therapists struggle with this, here's the real root. Right now I'm going through a masterclass on personality types with my team, and then also with physical therapists I'm mentoring. And it's very important that, anytime that I have anybody that I'm leading or I'm hiring, I want to know what their personality is, but I also want to know what type of personality type they have. And when I break this down, drivers are like, there's a term called a driver. They are a business owner, they're an entrepreneur, somebody who just they just smash things. They don't care. They just want to get what they need. And you know who those people are. Somebody who's an expressive is somebody who's very emotional. They can't get through a full evaluation. They're just always concerned about things, right? Always worrying. And amiable is somebody who is just I'm along for the ride. Just tell me what to do. They don't really question your thoughts. They just tell you, they just ask you, hey, what do I do here? And then you have the person who is the analytic. This is the person who is like an accountant. They're a physical therapist. They're a healthcare provider. They're very, very logical. I want to know, if you're a PT student, you probably went to you looked at 10 different schools. You saw the applications. You did a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, and you did all the cells and color coded them. And they found I'm getting this school and this school. That's an analytic. Well, the strength of an analytic is that you're very logical. You are very, you forecast. You know how to know you want to know what the plan is. And the irony of this is that you love to know what the black and white is. You don't like living in the gray because you want the answer. That's why you got into science. That's why you got into healthcare, because you want to have answers. Well, the irony is when a patient asks you, how long is this going to take? You can't plan. The thing that you love is that you love knowing what's ahead. You want to make a very good judgment and decision. But when a patient asks you, hey, I have knee pain, and I'm going to run a marathon in 6 months or for 3 months, whatever that is. When will I be able to run again? And you're like, well, we're going to take it week by week. We're going to take it day by day. We'll come back next visit. We'll reassess how you're doing. What you're doing is you're not answering the question. You're avoiding the question because you don't feel confident in your own skills to project and say, this is going to take 10 weeks. You don't even know if you have the skills to be able to forecast that much. Physical therapists are fantastic or going day by day, but they don't plan. They can't plan. It's not part of your normal wheelhouse. It's not your algorithm. The irony is that you're an analytic and you love knowing the future and the forecast. But the minute a patient does that to you, you're like, I don't know about that. So you can't deliver on what you love. Now, the problem is when you get stumped on if the patient is an analytic, they want to know everything. Well, is it my gluteus medius when I do the Trendelenburg this way? Is it when I heel strike? Is it mid stance? Is it toe off? They want to know everything. And while you love talking to them, you still can't handle the big problem, which is, okay, well, great. How long is this going to take? How many sessions will I be here? I know my insurance approved 12 visits, so I'll use them all. You can't answer those because you don't feel confident in yourself. So there's a couple hard conversations you need to have. And out of all of this, the irony is that sometimes, actually most of the time, it translates to a relationship at home. What's funny is that I was just talking to a PT student on, choosing the right school, choosing, what they wanted to, do and the type of partner they were looking for. And I was like, wow, you're going into PT school already thinking about this? Yeah. And we went through the personality types and they're like, gosh, it'd be tough to work with, when you're working with an expressive, somebody who's just super emotional all the time. It's very hard to get through a full evaluation. And he said this. He said, it'd be tough to even marry one of those. I was like, well, I wasn't even going that direction, but that was in his head. And I said, you know what? Honestly, the reality is, if you are an analytic and you're a physical therapist and you marry another analytic, analytics don't like to have confrontation. The challenge with that is, both of them avoid confrontation. That's just in general. Like if you love science, you're in accounting, you're in healthcare, you're in science, you're probably an analytic personality. One of the weaknesses of an analytic personality is that they avoid confrontation. They don't want to have it. So what do most people do? They just live in their heads. Like these two people aren't getting along. And what are they doing? Like, oh, this person's a jerk. This person's not nice. And when they get in front of each other, they're just like, nobody wants to have a conversation. So they just go about their lives. So they're not really living one relationship. They're having just two separate ones, and they happen to coexist. And the problem with that is, let's apply that to patients. And when you're working with a patient, that person is an analytic, doesn't want to confront, and they ask you some simple questions. You're like, I want to run away. I don't know how to handle this. So what happens? You get non-compliance, poor outcomes, and nobody is successful. When in reality, then you go behind the scenes and you go back to document, like, yeah, they weren't a good fit here. They weren't compliant. They didn't like their homeworks. No, it's because you didn't do your job. Your job, your purpose, this is where it starts. Your purpose as a physical therapist is to be a healthcare provider. Do no harm, right? But do no harm is a very passive way to do this. It doesn't mean do good. It just means do no harm. It means don't do the bare minimum and get people hurt. But what about what's the right thing to do for people to get them on the right path? That's not part of our ethos. So now how do you do that? Well, you change your view and your purpose. What is your purpose as a physical therapist? Is to point people in the right direction and push in that direction. The part of the ethos is do no harm, but that's the bare minimum. That means you can get average patient outcomes and still be a good physical therapist because you did no harm. You did mediocre. But how do you become the best version of yourself, push people to get better, faster, and in the direction that they want? So instead of saying passively, do no harm, how do you get the best version of your patients? That means you got to push them, which means you got to be able to do two things: design a plan of care and have a hard conversation. So the thing you'll struggle with as a physical therapist is because you've been so used to an insurance-based style that you've never had to think about what's a plan. Because you've been fed through the primary care, it's been fed through insurance, and they told you what the plan was, so your job was to execute. Put the item in the box, put tape on top of that, put it down the factory line, and send it off. Get the patient, look at their impairments, measure it, submit the insurance information, get them better, discharge, and get them off, right? That's the same cycle. Now, that's the bare minimum. The question here is, can you get those outcomes just a little faster? And then what happens with a higher end athlete, maybe a pro, who wants to know all the answers, and they play week to week. They want to know, am I going to play this week? What do I expect? Am I taping this week? What are we doing in 3 weeks? I have a championship game in 4 weeks. They want to know day by day, play by play, week by week. And so if you're really interested in working with these athletes, or more people who are maybe going out of network or cash pay or whatever it is, you have to learn how to have these hard conversations with yourself first, and then also with your patients. Now, it all starts with, what is your purpose? It's to push people to the best version of themselves, not to do bare minimum. So if we know that, your job is, whenever a patient comes to see you, in network, out of network, cash, doesn't matter. When they come to see you and it says knee pain, right? And they are a pickleball player, they're a softball player, football player, whatever it is. Your job is to point them in the right direction. How do we start that? Give them a plan that tells them when they will be better. Now, I'm talking about how close to 100% will you get them. So if they're approved for 10 visits, your job here is, at the initial evaluation, forecast how long will it take to get them close to 100% better by 10 visits. Now, if you go 2 times a week for 5 weeks, how can you not project how well they're going to be at 10 weeks? Well, you'll be like, oh, every patient's different. What if they're 30 years old? What if they were in a car accident? The reality is, you know what a grade 1 sprain is, you know what a grade 2 sprain is, and you know what a grade 3 sprain is. If you know those timelines, they pretty much go to ligamentous, bone, soft tissue injuries, everything else within a few weeks, right? So if you have a bone bruise, how long is it going to take? Well, is it like a level 1, whatever it is? Is it a contusion? Is it a muscle strain? Is it a level 1, 2, or 3? If you know what level 1, 2, and 3 is, you know what the healing timelines are. It's going to be 4 to 6 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks, or beyond, or repair through surgery. So really it comes down to is, if it's a grade 1, 4 to 6 weeks. It's a grade 2, 10 to 12 weeks. Most responses can be in that. So if this rotator cuff strain, a grade 1 or grade 2, well, it's a grade 1, it's light, great, it's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks. Well, sprained ankle, grade 2, great, 10 to 12 weeks. You now know when healing would be done. So therefore, you can now present the percent to get them better. You can now say, by 10 or 12 weeks, we'll get you 100% back on the field. Why can't you do that? because you never saw it that your job is to push people in the right direction. Your job, you used to think that it was every week I just do the bare minimum and just wait till the next visit and wait till the next visit until I use all 12 visits. That's great if you're an average, mediocre physical therapist. That's how people work. I just want to show up to work on the factory line and get people better. But you are in the different wheelhouse. Your job is now to figure out, if I only get 10 visits, how do I get the best outcomes in those 10 visits? Versus it's visit number 1, I'll figure out what to do at visit number 2 next week. I know what you're doing. I've worked and helped physical therapists just like you. You go in stages. You get super motivated right after PT school. Then you perceive burnout because you're mediocre and you don't want to do more CEUs or work more hours or do all those things. It's all in the prep work and how you see it. There's nothing wrong with your profession. It's just how you see it. There is nothing wrong in this world. It's just how you see it. And if you see that your job is hard, you see that you can't get people better, it's just how you view it. How do we change that to then have smoother, easier conversations? It starts with, what do you perceive that you do first? Got it. Next, now you have to be able to improve your ability to forecast and create a plan for somebody. If you do this, it allows you to say, hey, at week 10, I expect you to be 90 to 100% better. Or excuse me, at session 10, week 5, session 10, because we said 2 times a week for 5 weeks. Now, all you have to do is work backwards. Let's assume 10% improvements over the next 5 weeks. So you should be about 50, 60% better in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then you can just go incrementally off of that. Now you can project or plan for people because you know what grade 1 is and grade 2 is. 4 to 6 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks. It's that simple. That's just soft tissue healing guidelines. Now, the problem becomes, all of the problems start after you deliver the plan. These are the hard conversations. Why? Because once you stick to a plan, then it's going to be like, well, what if I have a tournament? What if I can't get back? Well, I have a scholarship on the line. These are the tough conversations, and most people want to avoid them. So what you typically do is, let's wait till next week. Let's wait till the next visit. All right. There's 2 real aspects on this. Questioning the performance of the plan, and then the finance side of it. So, performance of the plan. So if they say, how do you know I'm going to get better by that time? Well, it's based on normal healing. Now, it's not just me doing all the work. I'm going to tell you that there's a normal process that you have to do. And most importantly, we have to figure out what to avoid so you don't flare this up. So you have your homework. My homework is to tell you what the plan is. Your homework is to avoid things from making it worse. So don't go play basketball with your friends after school when you just hurt your knee. That I can't control. I'm going to give you the plan on what to do. I'm also going to tell you what not to do, and it's your job to avoid that. That is what the plan is. So if a parent comes in and they're not, concerned, well, I need surgery. Well, there's really only 2 options. Do you want surgery or not? That's it. Don't put it back on me. What's the plan? The plan is, I can tell you what the options are. You make that decision. Most physical therapists absorb this. It's because you view that it's your job. No. It's your job. What is your underlying purpose and premise? To get people to maximum outcomes, to live life to the best abilities. But you can't do that if you don't give people the option. So your job is, how do I present this? So if you want surgery, great, there's 2 options. All right, if everything was torn and you're living life the way you are now, and it's completely torn, and MRI says positive that you need surgery, do you want surgery? The person can ask yay or nay. Well, no, I want to avoid it. Great, then I would give you maximum 6 months trial at this, or whatever your insurance or primary care surgeon says on this. I would go 6 months maximum. Maybe a year if you really want to be conservative, or you're young, or whatever it is. Now, if you want surgery, why are we having this conversation? You're asking me for, something that you already know what you want. So the question is, that's a hard conversation. Things like this. Do you want surgery or not? No, then we go conservative. But here is what you risk. You risk worsening it, you delayed response. We could have had surgery right off the bat. It's not my job to tell you what to do. I'm just here to help you make a better decision with the options that I have. Instead of absorbing all of that as a sports physical therapist, your job is now, how do you help people make better decisions so they can have those hard conversations in their head, not relying on you. The second one is, it's expensive. Maybe a patient comes in, they're like, hey, maybe they went through insurance, and the insurance says, you're allowed 6 visits, and it's post-op. And you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? It's an ACL repair with meniscus repair. So now you have to decide, okay, well, sorry, Barry, your knee is going to need, let's say, 24 visits across a year, maximum, right? Like you can push that out. That's like bare minimum. You can totally do this. So it's 24 visits. Let's do 6 months. 24 visits in 6 months. Okay. And they said, well, I only get 6. And now the gap is 18 sessions. And maybe their copay is $50 a session. Oh my goodness. So now they're out $900. And they're like, wow, that's really expensive for me. What's your job? Is to get people to as far as possible as they can get with the best outcomes. Your job is not to be a financial planner, but the problem is that physical therapists absorb that. It's, oh gosh, I'm just I just want to help people. I got into the profession because I was in high school and somebody helped me and a family member got sick and I helped them, right? Whatever your story is. The reality is that's your disconnect from what your purpose is. Yours is to help people. You're emotionally connected to helping people. And, in my last podcast, a couple other videos that I've done is I've mentioned that you have to get connected to people's brain, not their heart. And you have to be able to help where they're stuck in their head, not their heart. And a lot of times you, as an empathetic, analytical human being, is you lead with your heart. And so what you have to do is figure out, okay, if it's expensive to them, my job is not to do that. My job is to provide value. So all I can do is give them the plan and forecast that out. And then how important is that to their life? That is your role. So if you can't plan, you can't have a hard conversation. Why? Because you have no options. And then you find yourself stuck in this wheel of, well, I'm not going to tell them the truth. Why don't you tell them the truth, what they need? So who's doing the harm? The patient could be getting better outcomes, but the physical therapist is holding back because they don't want to hurt their feelings. They don't want to be judged. So who's doing the harm? You mean you have access to information and resources that this other person can benefit from, but because you perceive that someone is going to view you poorly, you don't want to deliver that. You're doing the harm. And so reality is you have to change the way you view what a hard conversation is. So if you're struggling with this, let me take this a little personal, because now, as I was talking to this physical therapy student, the reality is analytics avoid this at home as well with their family and everything else. So say you have a partner who's an analytic. Well, maybe you married another physical therapist, and that person is an analytic, and they avoid confrontation. But now you're understanding how people process information, how relationships work, how a patient-PT relationship works, and a PT to PT relationship works. Both people are arguing about a simple thing, right? One decides that they don't, they're very frustrated with how they're acting, and the other person says, fine, I'm not going to do anything about it. Great. No one really talks about it. And so you have this constant wheel of turmoil that then challenges the internal relationship. And these two people having two separate relationships, they have a challenge with each other, and then they don't thrive, and they have this constant issue. Now, let's assume maybe you get a dog, or you have a kid. All those things compile into, if you don't get to the root of it, all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. So you fill the gap and you add a dog in, or a new apartment complex, or a new something, so that way it fills that void temporarily, so you can pay attention to something else, when in reality, the root never got solved, which was, if you don't know how to manage conflict and have really good thought-provoking conversations, such as, hey, I notice when you get upset when you do this, or seeing when people have challenges and can't simplify them. So when a patient's asking you, hey, can I practice in 8 weeks? You don't avoid that. Say, great, let's look at some options here. Always open with that. That's fantastic. Let's think about some options. So instead of saying, hey, do I need this surgery? All right, let's look at some options. That opens the window versus, just wait till next session. Because you're just delaying the inevitable, and you know what's going to happen is that patient's going to forget. Well, they're not going to forget. They're just not going to use you in the future. So the way you handle this, change the view of who you are and what you do and what your role is. Next, open with, great, let's look at some options. And even if you're wrong, the reality is you're taking the step in the right direction. And most people can't handle that. Why? Because you've always been a perfectionist. You've been really good at your craft, and you never have been not good at something. And the reality is, because you've lived an analytic lifestyle, you don't want to be wrong, and you don't want to be judged. And that's holding you back from true success. And the thing you're missing to get the outcomes you want is having good conversations and opening it with, great, let's look at some options. One simple thing can be a huge tweak to your approach with patients. And once you do this, it explores more tough conversations. Okay, after surgery, will I be able to play soccer again in 9 months? Well, let's look at some options. If we do this right, 9 months is a very, very tight timeline, and it's a high re-tear rate for ACLs. It'd be ideal to wait till 12 months. Now, where is your season and what problem do you want? So if they're like, well, my season starts in 10 months, I wanted to start practicing at 9, and I have a championship game at month 12, what challenge or problem do you want? Do you want to be able to play in the championship with a higher chance of stability and everything else, or risk tearing early and going in a little too soon? Which one do you want? It's not my job to make that decision. So instead of asking, can I play the championship or can I play in 9 months? It's, do you want to play in 9 months with a higher risk or 12 months with more security? I just flipped that question back on you. Instead of feeling like the hard conversation, that's an internal challenge. It's not hard. It's just your view of it. So the next time you're struggling, the next time you see that a patient is not getting the outcome they want, or the patient hits you with hard conversations or tough questions to begin with, stop avoiding them. Whether it's expensive or not. Going back to that case, if they have to pay $900 to go back and have an ACL that's strong, stable, in the best possible condition in 6 months, the question is $900 worth the certainty that their lifestyle will be back in the time that they need? And all you do is you present that. Great, Barry, let's look at some options. I can see you once a month at the risk of your knee being stiff, atrophied or smaller, delaying your time to be able to safely walk again, delaying your time to jog again, delaying your progression back to basketball. So instead of a 6-month recovery, this can be a 9 or 12-month recovery, bare minimum, just to get you to a 6-month mark. So if you want to run slow, we can do that for you. It's not ideal because your risk of re-tearing, your structure, your stability, your pain levels won't be good. Or we do this in 6 months, you decide how to find that money, and we get you to the point where you can walk, jog, and everything else by the 6-month mark. So I'll put that back on you. I'm not here to be your financial planner. My job is to show you how I can get you there. So if you have a plan for Barry, now he sees, well, gosh, 6 months is nice, 12 months of recovery, but looking like a 6-month ACL is not ideal. So in reality is, let them make that decision. So instead of feeling like it's a hard conversation, put it back on the patient, put it back on your partner, and let's look at some options. Why do you see it that way? Most physical therapists struggle because it's an internal conflict. It's a self-belief problem. And the reality is none of this is that. It's just how you view what you're doing. And once you change that, you can now open a significantly heavy door and provide people higher value, higher clinical outcomes, faster, and people just love you. So you are the person who's holding your success back. So stop looking for more CEUs, stop looking for more books to improve yourself, stop looking for more research articles to justify the thing that you want to do with the balanced, exercise and the new tool or thing, whatever it is. Those are all distractions because you can't get to the root of where you struggle. And that's having a good conversation and telling people the truth and providing them options so they can be successful by themselves. If you can't do that, that person's constantly dependent on you to give those answers. And if we are truly creating independence for people, it's having less reliance on you. So by you providing more information, resources, and a plan, it allows them to make the best decision for themselves. So if you don't, and you keep having them rely on you, and for your answers, and you feel bad and keep saying, let's come next week, they're dependent on you and they don't get the outcome they want. That is what you need to be able to serve. So for you, if you're stuck and you're like, I don't even know what to do, how do I take this framework? I created something called
my Sports PT Kickstarter. It's an 8-week online mentorship course to help people just like yourself just find yourself in this framework. I was tired of seeing the same CEUs, right? The same balance exercise, the same fancy, with the stretch band or whatever it is, or the mobility, and you need to learn a little bit of programming. Ultimately, I wanted a physical therapist who wanted a bigger approach to working with athletes, who wanted the framework, the skeleton. Show me how to map this out. How do I work with somebody for 3 months? How do I get more pro athletes? And if you're tired of the same clinical skills and the same adjustments and the taping and all those things, the problem is you're learning pieces of it and not how to put it together. So I created my 8-week online mentorship course to create something that puts all of those things together for somebody who is a new grad, 10 years out, wanting to work with it. They're tired of insurance, they're tired of the ortho patients, non-motivated people, and you just want more athletes on your schedule. Whether you're cash pay or not, it really doesn't matter. Ultimately, you have to get yourself in front of athletes, and once they're there, you have one opportunity, and you have to be able to explain that right off the top. And once you get that, that's when your schedule gets filled with athletes. Not just because you take a certain CU course or a golf certification, all those things. They don't just appear. When they do appear, you have to be ready. And so if you're interested in that and you're like, well, I'm ready to commit, I want to be with more athletes, then my Sports PT Kickstarter is going to be fantastic for you. You can go to drchrisgarcia.com/Kickstarter and you can register there. Ultimately, I hope this episode helps you put yourself in a better position so you can see working with athletes is different, and your clinical approach that you were doing before might have been the worst possible, or even better, now you see yourself kind of more in the middle. So I'm excited to continue to help you grow inside your clinical practice. And if I don't see you at the Kickstarter, I'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Hi, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for my weekly tips on treating cash pay patients, becoming that expert in your community, and thriving in business. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.